about the first action hero. It's Judas Maccabeus, Judah the Hammer. So let's begin by reading it. This is how First Maccabee starts out. After Alexander the Macedonian, Alexander the Great. After Alexander the Macedonian, Philip's son, who came from the land of Kittim, sometimes Kittim is Greece. I think it is Greece. The land of Kittim, Greece. Referred originally in the habits of Kitty, the capital of the island of Cyprus. Then any Cypriots, later Greeks in general, and even Romans. Okay. Came from the land of Kittim, had defeated Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes. He became king in his place, having first ruled in Greece. He fought many campaigns, captured fortresses, put kings to death. He advanced to the ends of the earth, gathering plunder from many nations. The earth fell silent before him, and his heart became proud and arrogant. He collected a very strong army and conquered provinces, nations, and rulers, and they became his tributaries. But after all this, he took to his bed, realizing that he was going to die. Therefore he summoned his officers, the nobles whom he had brought up with him from his youth. He divided his kingdom among them while he was still alive. Alexander reigned 12 years when he died. So his officers took over his kingdom, each in his own territory after his death. They all put on royal crowns, and so did their sons after them for many years, causing much distress over the earth. What was I going to say about this? Basically when Alexander stopped fighting, he just became a fat old drunk who just slept with women. He was a great genius and a great conqueror in battle, but after he had no more wars to fight. There's actually a story that when he had gotten to the edge, to the desert, basically, of what was known as the known world, he dropped to his knees and started to cry because there was nothing more to conquer. But then again, there was India. But how advanced is India? That there's that. At least that's the legend. Continuing on, pact. This is numeral 2. It's still part of chapter 1. Pact between the Jews and Gentiles. There sprang from these a sinful offshoot, Antiochus Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus, once held hostage in Rome. He became king in the year 137 of the kingdom of the Greeks. The dating system in here is off because it's using a different dating system. Obviously, it's not using AD and BC. Antiochus was part of the Seleucid dynasty. Again, it's been a while since I've read this. It might say it later on. He became king in the year 137 of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days there appeared in Israel men who were breakers of the law. They seduced many people, saying, "Let us go and make an alliance with the Gentiles all around us, since we are separated from them. Many evils have come upon us. Since we are separated from them, many evils have come upon us." The proposal was agreeable. Some from among the people promptly went to the king, and he authorized them to introduce the way of living of the Gentiles. Thereupon he built a gymnasium in Jerusalem according to the Gentile custom. They covered over their mark of circumcision. I don't know how that was um, and abandoned the Holy Covenant, and they allied themselves with the Gentiles and sold themselves to wrongdoing. And then it's got a footnote here, gymnasium, a symbol, well, this is self-explanatory, a symbol and center of athletic and intellectual life. It was a chief instrument of Hellenistic propaganda. Jewish youth were attracted by sports and encouraged to join youth clubs. They began receiving training in military skills and in the duties of citizens throughout participation in intellectual life. Many were gradually won over to paganism. Egyptian campaign of Antiochus. When his kingdom seemed secure, Antiochus proposed to become king of Egypt. So he ruled over both kingdoms. This is the Ptolemies that he's fighting against. He invaded Egypt with a strong force, with chariots and elephants. And with a large fleet to make war on Ptolemy. There it is. To make war on Ptolemy, the king of Egypt. Ptolemy was frightened at his presence and fled, leaving many casualties. The fortified cities of the land of Egypt were captured, and Antiochus plundered the land of Egypt. Here's the next part, the persecution of the Jews. After Antiochus defeated Egypt in the year 143, he returned and went up to Israel, to Jerusalem with a strong force. He insolently invaded the sanctuary. He took away the golden altar, the lampstand, the light of all its fixtures, the offering table, the cups, the bowls, the golden censers, the curtain, the crowns, the golden ornament of the facade of the temple. He stripped off everything and took away the gold and silver and precious vessels. He also took all the hidden treasures he could find. Taking all this, he went back to his own country after he had spoken with great arrogance and shed much blood. Notice they don't mention the ark. But this temple was not the temple that fell to the Babylonians. This was the one that was rebuilt by Zerubbabel. So if people talk about the second temple, there was actually 3 temples. I can get into that, how Herod had to actually build the temple before he could remove one stone from the temple that was built by, constructed under Zerubbabel. And there was great mourning for Israel in every place where they dwelt. And the rulers and the elders groaned. Virgins and young men languished. The beauty of the women was disfigured. Every bridegroom took up lamentation. She who sat in the bridal chamber mourned. And the land was shaken on the account of its inhabitants. And all the house of Jacob was covered with shame. 2 years later, the king sent Myasan, the Mysian commander, to the cities of Judah. He came to Jerusalem with a strong force. He spoke to them deceitfully in peaceful terms. He won their trust. Then he attacked the city suddenly in a great onslaught and destroyed many of the people in Israel. He plundered the city and set fire to it, demolished its houses and its surrounding walls. He took captive the women and the children and seized the cattle. Then they built up the city of David with a high, massive wall and strong towers, and it became a citadel. And there installed a sinful race, perverse men who fortified themselves inside, storing up weapons and provisions, and depositing their plunder that they had collected from Jerusalem, and they became a great threat. The citadel became an ambush against the sanctuary and the wicked adversary to Israel at all times, and they shed innocent blood around the sanctuary. They defiled the sanctuary because the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled away, and she became an abode of strangers. She became a stranger to her own offspring. Her children forsook her, and the sanctuary was as desolate as a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbaths to shame, her honor to contempt. Her dishonor was great as her glory had been. Her exaltation was turned into mourning. Prohibitions against religion. Then the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, each abandoning their particular customs. All the Gentiles conformed to the command of the king, and many Israelites were in favor of his religion, and they sacrificed to idols and profaned the Sabbath. Let's begin by reading it. This is how First Maccabee starts out. After Alexander the Macedonian, Alexander the Great. After Alexander the Macedonian, Philip's son, who came from the land of Kittim, sometimes Kittim is Greece. I think it is Greece. The land of Kittim, Greece. Referred originally in the habits of Kitty, the capital of the island of Cyprus. Then any Cypriots, later Greeks in general, and even Romans. Okay. Came from the land of Kittim, had defeated Darius, king of the Persians. It's about the first action hero. It's Judas Maccabeus, Judah the Hammer. In the Medes. He became king in his place, having first ruled in Greece. He fought many campaigns, captured fortresses, put kings to death. He advanced to the ends of the earth, gathering plunder from many nations. The earth fell silent